The judges were already reaching for their buzzers when he walked onto the stage. The audience exchanged doubtful glances. A skinny young man in a second-hand blazer, scuffed shoes, and trembling hands stepped into the spotlight of America's Got Talent. He looked like someone who had taken a wrong turn backstage. No flashy entrance. No dramatic music cue. Just nervous eyes in a dream everyone else had already decided was impossible. But what happened next would make millions question how quickly they judge a book by its cover. Before we begin, if you love stories that prove dreams can rise from the ashes of doubt, take a second right now, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Because stories like this deserve to be heard, and you deserve to be reminded that impossible is often just a word. His name was Daniel Reyes. 22 years old. Born in a cramped apartment above a laundromat in a quiet neighborhood where sirens were more common than applause. His father had been a construction worker who used to sing late at night after exhausting shifts. Not pop songs. Not modern hits. But old vinyl classics from a scratched record player, especially songs by Elvis Presley. When Daniel was 9, he would sit cross-legged on the floor, watching his father close his eyes and sing "Can't Help Falling in Love" as if the king himself were standing in their living room. His father would wink at him and say, "Music doesn't care who you are, son. It only cares how honest you are." Then one winter evening, everything changed. His father never came home from work. A workplace accident. A phone call. A hospital hallway. And silence where music used to live. After that, the record player gathered dust. His mother worked double shifts. Daniel grew quiet. Kids at school teased him for humming old songs. "What are you, 80 years old?" they laughed. When he told them he wanted to sing like Elvis one day, they didn't just laugh, they made it a running joke. "Elvis? Bro, this isn't the 1950s. He tried joining the school talent show once. His hands shook so badly he forgot the lyrics halfway through. The crowd giggled. Someone booed. He ran off stage, humiliation burning into his memory like a scar. That night he told his mother he was done singing. But grief has a strange way of circling back to the things we bury. Years later, while cleaning out an old closet, Daniel found his father's record player. He plugged it in out of curiosity. It crackled. Spun. And then the warm, familiar voice of Elvis filled the room again. Something inside him broke and healed at the same time. He sang alone quietly at first. Then louder. Then with tears streaming down his face. That was the night he decided he wasn't singing to impress anyone anymore. He was singing to feel close to his father again. He began performing at small diners, retirement homes, street corners. Most people ignored him. Some recorded short clips and laughed online. "Dollar Store Elvis," one comment read. "Wrong century, buddy," said another. But sometimes, just sometimes, an elderly woman would squeeze his hand and whisper, "You sound like my youth." And that was enough to keep him going. One evening, a regular customer at the diner handed him a napkin with a website scribbled on it. "You ever thought about auditioning for America's Got Talent?" Daniel laughed it off. Shows like that were for polished performers. For viral sensations. For people who didn't look like they borrowed their cousin's blazer. But the idea wouldn't leave him alone. Months later, after countless internal battles and sleepless nights, he found himself standing backstage at AGT. Other contestants warmed up with vocal runs that sounded superhuman. Dancers stretched like Olympians. Magicians rehearsed dramatic flourishes. Daniel stood alone, holding a worn photo of his father in his pocket. When his name was called, his legs felt like water. He stepped onto the stage. The lights blinded him. The judges looked politely curious. The audience seemed restless. One judge asked, "So Daniel, what are you going to sing for us tonight?" He swallowed. An Elvis song. There it was, that ripple of doubt across the room. "Interesting choice," another judge said carefully. A few people chuckled. You can almost hear the unspoken thought, "This won't end well." The music began. For half a second, his voice trembled. And then something shifted. The nerves dissolved. The stage disappeared. The audience vanished. It was just him and the memory of his father singing in their tiny apartment. His voice poured out rich, soulful, impossibly powerful. Not an imitation. Not a parody. But a tribute that carried pain, love, and years of quiet resilience in every note. The room froze. Midway through the first verse, the judges stopped writing. By the chorus, mouths were open. By the final high note, the entire theater was on its feet. Not polite applause. Not mild appreciation. A roar. A standing ovation that shook the walls. One judge leaned forward, visibly emotional. "Daniel, when you walked out here, I'll be honest, we weren't sure. But that was extraordinary." Another added, "You didn't just sing Elvis. You honored him. And you made it your own." Daniel blinked back tears. For a second, he imagined his father standing in the wings, nodding proudly. Then came the votes. Yes. 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 And then a pause. The final judge smiled slowly before slamming the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained down like a storm of second chances. Daniel fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Years of ridicule. Years of doubt. Years of being told he was born in the wrong era, all washed away in that single shimmering moment. But the story didn't end there. As his audition aired, the internet reacted differently this time. The same platforms that once mocked him now flooded with praise. Clips went viral. Headlines read, "Underdog channels Elvis and steals the show." More importantly, messages poured in from people who had almost given up on their own dreams. A middle-aged man wrote, "I stopped playing guitar after my dad passed. Watching you made me pick it up again." A teenage girl messaged, "They laugh at me for singing old songs too. Not anymore." Daniel realized something powerful. This wasn't about sounding like Elvis. It was about refusing to let the world decide your expiration date. Week after week on AGT, he performed with growing confidence. He didn't win the entire competition, but he didn't need to. Because he had already won something far greater. Belief. Record labels called. Tribute tours were planned. But the most meaningful moment came months later when he performed in his old neighborhood. Same streets. Same people. This time, no one laughed. His mother stood in the front row, tears shining in her eyes. When he finished, she hugged him tightly and whispered, "Your father would be so proud." And for the first time since that winter evening years ago, Daniel felt whole. Here's the truth, the world will often doubt you before it understands you. They will measure your dream against trends, statistics, and expectations. They will tell you it's outdated. Unrealistic. Impossible. But dreams don't expire. Passion doesn't have a deadline. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one song, to silence a lifetime of doubt. So if there's something in your heart that won't go away, don't bury it. Nurture it. Practice when no one is watching. Believe when no one else does. Because one day, you might step onto your own stage, whatever that stage looks like, and prove them all wrong. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Because you never know whose dream is hanging by a thread, and your support might be the golden buzzer they've been waiting for. And remember, no one believed him. Until he sang. The night he almost turned around and walked away was the night everything changed. Backstage at America's Got Talent, the hallway buzzed with nervous energy. Contestants rehearsed, producers whispered into headsets, cameras rolled past like silent witnesses. And in the middle of it all stood a 23-year-old delivery driver named Marcus Hale holding a microphone he wasn't sure he deserved. When he told people he was going to audition with an Elvis Presley song, they didn't just doubt him. They laughed. But what happened on that stage would leave the judges speechless and the entire theater on its feet. Before we dive in, if you believe underdogs deserve their moment, take 1 second right now, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because stories like this remind us why we never give up. Marcus grew up in a small town where dreams felt like decorations, nice to look at, but not meant to be touched. His father ran a repair shop. His mother cleaned offices at night. Money was tight, but music was free. Every Sunday afternoon, his grandfather would sit in a faded armchair and play old vinyl records. The one that played the most? Elvis. Marcus didn't understand why his grandfather's eyes would shine when those songs filled the room. He only knew that when Elvis sang, the world felt bigger. At 11 years old, Marcus stood on a milk crate in the garage and mimicked those songs. His family clapped. His grandfather would grin and say, "You've got that fire, kid." But school was different. When classmates found out he liked old people music, they teased him relentlessly. "Are you trying to be a time traveler? Elvis? Bro, nobody listens to that anymore." He tried out for the high school talent show once. Halfway through the first verse, someone in the crowd yelled, "Wrong century." Laughter echoed. His throat tightened. He finished the song, but the damage was done. That night he told his grandfather he was quitting singing. His grandfather looked at him carefully and said something Marcus would never forget. "People laugh at what they don't understand. But when you're brave enough to show them, they'll clap." A year later, his grandfather passed away. The garage became quiet. The milk crate collected dust. And Marcus packed away the records. Life moved on. He got a job delivering packages. Woke up at 5 a.m. every day. Drove the same routes. Heard the same complaints. Watched other people chase dreams while he carried boxes. But every once in a while, when he was alone in the truck, he would sing. Softly at first. Then louder. One afternoon, a coworker overheard him. Instead of mocking him, she stared in disbelief. "Why are you delivering packages?" she asked. "You should be on a stage." He shrugged it off. But she didn't. Weeks later, she secretly signed him up to audition for America's Got Talent. When he found out, he was furious. Then terrified. Then, curious. Standing backstage on audition day, doubt crept in. The other contestants looked polished, confident, modern. He felt like a throwback nobody asked for. When his name was called, his heart pounded so hard he thought the microphone would pick it up. He stepped onto the stage. The judges smiled politely. "What will you be performing today?" one asked. Marcus took a breath. "An Elvis Presley classic." A few audience members chuckled. One judge raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold choice." Bold. Or foolish. The music began. For a split second, his voice wavered. He saw faces in the crowd already preparing to judge. Then he remembered his grandfather's words. And something ignited. His voice deepened, smooth, and soared with raw, unexpected power. It wasn't karaoke. It wasn't imitation. It was emotion. It was grief. It was love poured into every note. By the second verse, the laughter had vanished. By the chorus, the audience leaned forward. And by the final note, strong, sustained, flawless, the entire theater exploded into applause. One judge stared at him, stunned. "Marcus! I did not see that coming." Another leaned in. "You walked out here looking like someone we might forget. But the second you opened your mouth, unforgettable." Tears welled in his eyes. The votes came quickly. Yes. 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 Then the final judge paused dramatically. Marcus's stomach dropped. "I think," the judge said slowly, "that this is exactly why this show exists." He slammed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained down as the crowd roared. Marcus stood frozen, hands covering his face, overwhelmed. Years of being dismissed. Years of self-doubt. Years of silence. All shattered in one moment. But here's what made this story truly powerful. After his audition aired, messages flooded in, not just from Elvis fans, but from people who felt overlooked in their own lives. A nurse wrote, "I'm 40 and want to go back to school. You made me believe it's not too late." A father said, "My son loves old music and gets teased. Tonight we watched your audition together. He's smiling again." Marcus realized the stage wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had been told they were outdated. Different. Too late. Not enough. Week after week, he returned to the AGT stage stronger. More confident. Still humble. He didn't try to modernize himself to fit trends. He stayed true to the music that shaped him. And something incredible happened. The same world that once mocked him began celebrating him. Radio interviews. Tribute shows. Invitations to perform across the country. But the most meaningful moment came when he returned to his small town. He performed in the same school auditorium where he had once been laughed at. This time, there was no laughter. Only applause. After the show, a shy teenage boy approached him. "They make fun of me for liking different music too," the boy said quietly. "But after tonight, I don't care anymore." Marcus smiled. Because that was the real victory. Here's the truth: people will doubt what they can't immediately categorize. They'll measure you against trends. Against expectations. Against what's popular right now. But greatness doesn't expire. Authenticity doesn't go out of style. And sometimes, the very thing they laugh at becomes the reason they stand. So if there's something inside you, an old dream, a quiet passion, a voice you've been afraid to use, don't silence it. Practice in the garage. Sing in the delivery truck. Prepare when no one is clapping. Because one day, you might step into your own spotlight and prove them wrong in a single breath. If this story inspired you, don't leave without taking action. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs courage tonight. Because the world may not believe in you at first. But when you finally sing, they will. The audience was already whispering before he even reached the center of the stage. A thin 19-year-old in an oversized thrift store suit, hair slicked back a little too carefully, stood under the blinding lights of America's Got Talent. His hands were shaking. His shoes were slightly too big. And his dream? Bigger than the room he was standing in. When the judge asked what he would be singing, he answered softly, "An Elvis Presley song." A few people laughed. That laugh would be the last sound they made before complete silence. But before we relive the moment that stunned millions, take a second, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that belief can change a life. His name was Anthony Cruz. He grew up in a crowded apartment in a city that moved too fast for dreamers. His mother worked at a bakery before sunrise. His older brother dropped out of school. Bills were always late. Arguments were loud. Hope felt quiet. But in the corner of their living room sat something magical, an old radio. Every Sunday morning, Anthony's grandmother would turn the dial until she found the familiar voice of Elvis Presley. She would close her eyes, hum along, and say, "This is real music. This is soul." Anthony didn't just listen. He studied. The tone. The phrasing. The emotion. The way Elvis didn't just sing lyrics, he felt them. By the time Anthony was 12, he was performing for family gatherings. Everyone clapped politely. But when he told classmates he wanted to sing Elvis songs professionally, the reaction was brutal. "Isn't he dead? Bro thinks he's in the 1950s. You'll never make it singing that stuff." The teasing turned into online jokes. Someone recorded him singing at a school event and posted it with laughing emojis. It spread faster than his confidence could recover. For months, he stopped singing in public. But pain has a strange way of shaping talent. One night, after a particularly hard day, he found his grandmother sitting quietly by the radio. She looked older than usual. Smaller. "Sing for me," she whispered. He hesitated. Then he sang. Halfway through the song, she began to cry. Not because he sounded exactly like Elvis, but because he sounded like himself. "You don't sing like him," she said gently. "You sing with him." That sentence changed everything. When his grandmother passed away a year later, Anthony felt like the music had left the house for good. The radio stayed silent. The apartment felt heavier. Until one evening, while scrolling on his phone, he saw auditions were open for America's Got Talent. He stared at the screen for a long time. He heard the laughter from school. He heard the comments. But louder than all of it, he heard his grandmother's voice. "You sing with him." Audition day arrived. Backstage, dancers stretched. Fire breathers rehearsed. Pop vocalists hit impossible high notes. Anthony felt invisible. A production assistant clipped the microphone to his jacket. "Nervous?" she asked. He nodded. "Good," she smiled. "That means it matters." When he stepped onto the stage, the judges smiled with polite curiosity. "What's your dream?" one asked. Anthony swallowed. "To keep a legacy alive, and make it my own." "And what are you singing?" He took a breath. An Elvis Presley classic. A ripple of doubt spread across the room. One judge leaned back slightly. The music started. For a split second, his voice cracked. Someone in the audience shifted in their seat. Then Anthony closed his eyes. And everything else disappeared. He wasn't on a giant stage anymore. He was back in that small apartment. Radio humming. Grandmother smiling. And when he opened his mouth again, the voice that came out didn't sound nervous. It sounded powerful. Deep. Soulful. Controlled. Emotional. Every note carried grief, love, and resilience. He wasn't impersonating. He wasn't copying. He was honoring. Midway through the performance, the judges' expressions changed. Eyebrows raised. Pens dropped. One judge leaned forward, completely still. By the final chorus, the entire audience was on its feet. And when he hit the last sustained note, strong and unwavering, the room erupted. Not polite applause. A roar. The kind that shakes the floor. Anthony stood frozen, eyes wide, as the noise washed over him. The first judge spoke softly. "Young man. I was ready to stop you. I thought this would be karaoke." The audience chuckled. But that, the judge continued, was artistry. Another judge added, "You took something classic and made it feel alive again." Anthony felt tears blur the stage lights. Then came the votes. Yes. 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 The final judge paused dramatically. Anthony's heart pounded. "I think," the judge said slowly, "your grandmother would be very proud." And then, the golden buzzer. Confetti exploded from above. Gold rained down like a storm of redemption. Anthony dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. Years of mockery. Years of doubt. Years of wondering if he was foolish to hold on to an old dream. All answered in one moment. But the most powerful part came later. When the audition aired, social media exploded, not with jokes, but with gratitude. Young people posted videos singing old songs proudly. Parents shared memories of music from their childhood. One comment read, "I lost my grandma last year. This made me feel close to her again." Anthony realized something bigger than winning was happening. He wasn't just performing. He was connecting generations. He went on to perform in the next rounds with confidence that didn't need validation anymore. He didn't win the entire competition. But he didn't lose. Because he had already proven something priceless. Different doesn't mean outdated. Passion doesn't have an expiration date. And the world doesn't get to decide when your dream is relevant. Months later, he performed at a small memorial concert in his old neighborhood. Standing on stage, he looked up at the sky before singing his grandmother's favorite song. For the first time, there was no fear. Only gratitude. So if you've ever been laughed at for loving something different, if you've ever been told your dream doesn't fit the times, if you've ever felt invisible in a world chasing trends, remember Anthony. Remember that stage. Remember that silence before the applause. Because sometimes, the very thing they doubt becomes the reason they stand. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope today. You never know who's one brave step away from their golden buzzer moment. No one believed him. Until he sang, they were already smirking before he even touched the microphone. The camera zoomed in on a quiet 24-year-old janitor standing center stage on America's Got Talent. His name tag was still clipped to his worn shirt because he had come straight from his night shift. His shoulders were slightly hunched. His palms were sweaty. He looked like someone who cleaned stages, not someone who belonged on one. When a judge asked what he would be performing, he cleared his throat and said, "An Elvis Presley song." A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. And in that moment, you could almost see it, the assumption. The judgment. The quiet decision that this would be over quickly. But what happened next would become one of the most unforgettable moments in AGT history. Before we continue, if you love stories where ordinary people prove the world wrong, take a second right now, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because someone out there needs this reminder today. His name was Caleb Morris. By day, he mopped hallways at a community college. By night, he cleaned office buildings downtown. Most people didn't know he existed. They walked past him while talking on phones, never making eye contact. But Caleb had a secret. Every night after everyone left, when the building lights dimmed and the floors were finally spotless, he would step into the empty auditorium. He would stand on the stage he had just cleaned. And he would sing. Not for applause. Not for money. But because singing was the only time he didn't feel invisible. He grew up in foster homes, moving from house to house, carrying his belongings in a trash bag. The only constant in his life was an old CD someone once left behind, an Elvis Presley Greatest Hits album by Elvis Presley. He didn't understand why that voice made him feel less alone. But it did. When other kids were playing sports, Caleb was memorizing lyrics. When they were chasing popularity, he was chasing pitch control and breath support. He tried singing in public once at a small open mic night. Halfway through the first verse, someone shouted, "What is this, a retirement home?" Laughter followed. He finished the song anyway. But he didn't sing in public again for 3 years. Until one night, while cleaning the college auditorium, he didn't realize a security guard had stayed late. Caleb was lost in the music, pouring everything into a song. When he finished, he heard clapping from the back of the room. The security guard, an older man with silver hair, walked down the aisle slowly. "Son," he said quietly, "you're wasting that voice on empty chairs." Weeks later, that same guard handed Caleb a printed audition form for America's Got Talent. Caleb almost threw it away. Who was he kidding? A janitor singing Elvis in 2026? In a world of viral pop stars and flashy performances? But something inside him whispered, if not now, when? And that's how he found himself standing under the bright lights. The judges looked curious but skeptical. "What's your story?" one asked. Caleb hesitated. "I clean buildings," he said simply. But I sing when no one's around. The audience murmured. And why Elvis? Another judge asked. He swallowed. Because when I felt like I didn't belong anywhere, his music made. They almost cut to commercial before he even opened his mouth. The camera panned across the judges' table on America's Got Talent, catching polite but distracted smiles. The audience had already seen dancers flipping through the air and singers belting modern pop hits. And then the host announced the next contestant, a 17-year-old grocery bagger who said he would be singing an Elvis Presley song. A few groans. A few nervous laughs. It was the kind of reaction that tells you the crowd has already decided your fate. But this was the night they were wrong. Before we step into that moment, if you believe in second chances and underdog victories, take 1 second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because this story might be the reminder someone needs today. His name was Liam Carter. He lived in a trailer park on the edge of town, the kind of place people drove past without noticing. His mom worked double shifts at a diner. His stepfather rarely spoke unless it was to criticize. Money was tight, tempers were tighter. The only thing that softened the air in that home was an old cassette player Liam found at a yard sale when he was 12. Tucked inside was a faded tape labeled simply, Elvis. The first time he pressed play, the room felt different. The voice that poured out wasn't just music. It was emotion wrapped in velvet and grit. Liam began singing along in secret. He'd wait until everyone was asleep, then step outside behind the trailer where the field stretched wide and empty. Under the open sky, he would sing to the stars, imagining they were stage lights. At school, he kept it hidden. But secrets have a way of slipping out. One afternoon during music class, the teacher asked for volunteers. A friend jokingly pushed Liam forward. He thinks he's Elvis, someone snickered. His face burned. But he sang anyway. When he finished, the room was silent, not impressed, just confused. Then someone clapped sarcastically. Wrong generation, dude. The laughter echoed for weeks. After that, Liam stopped singing at school. But he didn't stop singing. Every night, behind that trailer, he practiced. He studied old performances online. He worked on breath control, tone, phrasing. He wasn't trying to copy. He was trying to understand what made a voice timeless. One evening, his mother heard him singing outside. Instead of interrupting, she stood quietly by the door, listening. When he finished, she had tears in her eyes. "Why don't you sing like that in front of people?" she asked softly. He shrugged. "They don't want to hear it." She placed her hand on his shoulder. "Maybe they just haven't heard it yet." Months later, a flyer for America's Got Talent auditions appeared on the grocery store bulletin board where Liam worked. He stared at it for days. Could a kid from a trailer park really belong on that stage? The night before auditions, his stepfather scoffed. "You're gonna embarrass yourself." Those words followed him all the way to the theater. Backstage, he felt small. Contestants with stylists and vocal coaches warmed up confidently. He stood alone in borrowed shoes and a simple black shirt. When his name was called, his heart pounded so hard he thought it would betray him. He walked onto the stage. Bright lights. Thousands of faces. Judges watching carefully. "So Liam," one judge said, "what are you singing?" He took a breath. "An Elvis Presley song." The audience reacted exactly how he feared. Skepticism. Murmurs. A judge leaned back slightly. "That's a big legacy to step into." Liam nodded. "I'm not trying to step into it," he said quietly. "I just want to honor it." The music started. For half a second, his voice trembled. He heard the laughter from school. He heard his stepfather's voice. He almost faltered. Then he remembered singing under the stars. And he closed his eyes. The first note came out steady. The second carried warmth. By the time he reached the chorus, the transformation was undeniable. His voice wasn't just powerful, it was textured with vulnerability. Every lyric felt lived in, honest. He didn't overdo it. He didn't imitate exaggerated movements. He stood still and let the music speak. Midway through the song, the judges' expressions changed. One whispered, "Wow." The audience leaned forward, captivated. And when Liam hit the final sustained note, clear, controlled, soaring, the theater erupted. Not polite applause. A standing ovation. The same crowd that had doubted him now cheered louder than anyone. Liam opened his eyes slowly, almost as if he didn't believe it was real. One judge smiled broadly. "Young man, I was ready to stop you. I thought this would be an impersonation act." Another added, "But that wasn't impersonation. That was heart." Tears filled his eyes. The votes came quickly. Yes. 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 The final judge paused for effect, then grinned. "You know what? I think America needs to hear more of that." She slammed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained down as Liam stood frozen in disbelief. His mother screamed from the audience, hands covering her face. For the first time in his life, the laughter had turned into applause. But the real victory happened later. When the episode aired, messages flooded in from small towns, trailer parks, night shift workers, and teenagers who felt overlooked. One comment read, "I sing in my room because I'm scared. After watching you, I'm signing up for my school talent show." Another said, "I'm 35 and gave up on music years ago. Tonight I picked up my guitar again." Liam didn't win the entire competition. But he won something bigger than a trophy. He won belief. Months later, he performed back in his hometown at the local fair. The same classmates who once laughed stood in the crowd. This time, they weren't laughing. They were cheering. After the show, his stepfather approached him awkwardly. "I was wrong," he admitted quietly. Liam smiled, not with pride, but with peace. "Here's the truth, people will doubt you based on where you come from, how you look, or what era your dream belongs to. They'll measure you by trends. They'll box you in with expectations. But talent doesn't ask for permission. And passion doesn't expire. If you're practicing your dream in secret. If you're being laughed at for loving something different. If you feel like the world has already made up its mind about you. Let them. Because one day, when you finally step into your spotlight, they might be the ones standing." If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs courage today. No one believed him. Until he sang and the producer whispered, "We might need to move this along," just seconds before he began. The camera zoomed in on a nervous 28-year-old busker standing center stage at America's Got Talent. His jacket was slightly faded, his boots worn from years of standing on sidewalks, and his guitar case, placed carefully behind him, still had subway dust clinging to the edges. He didn't look like a headline. He looked like background noise. When the judge asked what he'd be performing, he gave a small, steady answer. An Elvis Presley song. The audience shifted. A few sighs. A few skeptical smiles. Because in a world chasing viral trends, who bets everything on a legend from another era? But this wasn't just a song. It was a lifeline. Before we step into what happened next, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because stories like this prove that your circumstances don't decide your ceiling. His name was Jonah Blake. He wasn't always a street performer. 3 years earlier, Jonah had a stable job at a warehouse. He had an apartment. He had plans. But when the company downsized, his name was on the list. Rent piled up. Savings disappeared. Pride dissolved quietly. Within months, he was sleeping on a friend's couch. Then in his car. The only thing he refused to sell was his father's old guitar and a vinyl collection that included every album by Elvis Presley. His father had been a mechanic who sang while fixing engines. Music makes hard days lighter, he used to say. After his father passed, those records were all Jonah had left of him. So when life cornered him, he did the only thing he knew how to do. He went to the subway. At first, he sang quietly, hoping no one would notice. But something strange happened. Commuters rushing past began slowing down. An older woman dropped a $5 bill and whispered, "That voice deserves a bigger stage." A businessman late for a meeting paused long enough to record a short clip. Within weeks, Jonah became known as the Subway Elvis. Not because he copied the king, but because he carried that same raw ache in his voice. Still, for every compliment, there were 10 dismissals. Get a real job. Nobody wants old songs. You're stuck in the past. Those words cut deep. But hunger cuts deeper. So he kept singing. One rainy night, after performing for nearly 4 hours, a little girl tugged at his sleeve. "My grandpa used to sing that," she said, smiling. "You sound like home." That was the first time Jonah realized he wasn't just singing for money. He was singing for memory. Months later, a viral clip of his subway performance reached a casting assistant from America's Got Talent. An email arrived in his inbox. At first, he thought it was fake. Then he thought it was cruel. Then he thought, maybe. Standing backstage on audition day, Jonah almost walked out. Contestants wore designer outfits. He wore his only blazer. Some had vocal coaches. He had subway acoustics. When he stepped onto the stage, the judges asked about his life. "I sing in the subway," he admitted. "And you chose Elvis?" one judge said carefully. Jonah nodded. It reminds people of who they were before life got heavy. The audience quieted slightly. The music began. For a heartbeat, his nerves threatened to crack his voice.